There are some farmers that have worked the system to their advantage, shall we say, but there's an awful lot of people that are using it to help them become more resilient and more sustainable. The reality is without those payments in a few years' time, unless commodity prices rise and costs reduce to enable them to actually earn sufficient money directly from the farming activities, then they are going to be in a real struggle, and they're going to be very, very vulnerable once those funding pots come to an end.
Just how bad will the government's spending review be for farming? We have a sneak preview of this month's cereals event and why it's so important to get the farming message across on Open Farm Sunday. Welcome to the Farmers Weekly podcast. I'm Johann.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh. Broom.
All that and more coming up, and indeed we do go straight to our top story. The government's spending review is expected to see widespread reductions in public spending, including for agriculture. Due this coming week, what will the impact be on farmers and what will we see? Well, Louise and I caught up with Robert Sullivan of Farm Business Consultants GSC Grays in the north of England. And I started by asking Robert what kind of spending review he thinks it will be.
I'm fearing the worst, to be perfectly honest. I think given the information that has been leaked or come out in the press, there's no smoke without fire. So I am fearing that there could well be quite a significant reduction in the DEFRA budget. I'm hoping otherwise. I do wonder how they're going to achieve everything that they've signed up to in terms of their environmental obligations going forward without sufficient funding in the pot, because unfortunately, if the farmers aren't going to get paid for undertaking this environmental work, they'll have no alternative than to bring it back into production, which will be a very sad state of affairs given the amount of work and effort and time that farmers have have undertaken over the last 20 years even to get to the land in the state that it is. But I am concerned about the mood music, shall we say, as what's come out, and if that is the case, then we are in for a tough time.
We do seem to be constantly expected to do more with less, to coin a phrase.
That's what they are seem to be wanting us to do, but the reality is every farmer is running a business and the business needs to make a profit for them to survive. And if farming was profitable in its own right, farmers would do things in their own right because they actually enjoy the countryside. The reality is farming per se is in a tough period at this moment in time. The economics of owl farming, beef and sheep farming, yes, prices are good, but the economics are not particularly exciting because of the loss of the BPS. They don't have the spare cash to do that. So anything they do that requires them to take land out of production or reduce the amount of activity on that land, they need to be paid for, or else it's not worth their while doing it.
Those farms that were lucky enough to get into the sustainable farming incentive have probably got about another 2 years of funding. After that, things are looking a bit different.
Totally, and it is a real concern because farmers have gone in. Yes, there are some farmers that have worked the system to their advantage, shall we say, but there's an awful lot of people that are using it to help them become more resilient and more sustainable. The reality is without those payments in a few years' time, unless commodity prices rise and costs reduce to enable them to actually earn sufficient money directly from the farming activities, then they are going to be in a real struggle. Everyone says, well, then diversify. Well, diversification is all well and good, but there's only a percentage of farmers that are going to be in a position and have the opportunity to do that. And most farmers do not have the capital behind them to necessarily diversify in any significant way. And they're going to be very, very vulnerable once those funding pots come to an end.
And alternative income streams, I mean, we've seen in the last few weeks biodiversity net gain being somewhat watered down by the government. We're hearing less than we were about carbon and carbon sales. Anything else we should be thinking about?
I don't think either of those are going to be the salvation for the majority of farmers. One or two people will be in the right place, certainly from a biodiversity net gain point of view, where they might make it might be very economically worthwhile for them. Carbon, I do question whether there's actually going to be any significant value to them for an awful long time yet. Certainly not soon enough to actually make a big impact to cover the actual loss of the SFI in a couple of years' time, if that's the direction of travel. Other schemes, other opportunities, very few and far between. You know, there is some private funding out there for various things, but that's probably for people where they're fairly close to the end user. For the majority of farmers who are growing feed wheat or store cattle or breeding sheep, I do question how they could actually take any value from that sort of funding stream.
That's Robert Sullivan from GSC Grays with what has to be said is a very gloomy outlook for the forthcoming spending review due to be published on the 11th of June, Hugh.
Do you know, I think there's probably, I don't think there's much room for having much other type of outlook, to be honest. And I think it's a prudent thing to have a gloomy outlook, given the, what's going on politically and what's going on fiscally. And we can see the direction of travel, can't we, with all that's been going on over the last few weeks and months. And I love the the press release that came out from DEFRA yesterday, surging profits on dairy and beef farms. So they're sort of putting, which probably is as a spot check for this year, particularly on the beef front. But it makes up for the last 50 odd years. And so they're putting plenty of cover out there ahead of saying, well, actually, there's absolutely nothing for elms, etc. So, I'm not budgeting for any support at all after this year, as I said the other week.
Louise, a lot riding on this spending review, as Robert Sullivan was saying, particularly in relation to things like the sustainable farming incentive.
Well, there's a great deal riding on this spending review. And, it's actually been quite interesting this week reading the national media. And there's all these reports of cabinet ministers storming out of meetings because they haven't got the budget or the money that they need. But, there's absolutely no mention of Steve Reed doing that. So I've got a horrible feeling that he has perhaps, once again, just rolled over. But, as I say, you hear Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband getting really het up and angry, not being able to achieve what they want their departments to achieve. But, I'm not sure that we've had that sort of support from our minister.
Not perhaps quite the end of public support or financial public support for farming, but increasingly clear, I guess, that the sustainable farming incentive and announcement has been promised after the spending review regarding its future, maybe not immediately after the spending review, but certainly this summer. It's increasingly clear, as Robert Sullivan was suggesting, that it will look different. It is likely to involve less money.
Oh, I suspect it will look very different, and I have a horrible feeling that it will be a lot less money. And I think Robert himself used the term mood music, and he's spot on with that, really. So I don't think that we can expect to see anything like we've had up to now, or nearly had, I suppose, because they suddenly stopped it. And I think these rumours probably are very true. I mean, we've all seen the RSPB this week really ramping up its efforts to stress the importance of funding nature, and also the link actually that does exist between farming and nature. You can't really have one without the other, and you certainly can't have thriving rural communities without that sort of support for nature, for wildlife, for biodiversity. So, We've seen farming and the environment really coming together, or the two different lobbies, if you like, coming together this week to really try and ram that home. But I've got a horrible feeling that it's just a little bit too little, too late.
It is hard to see how agriculture, or indeed the environment, can get any increased funding when there are so many other pressures. I mean, yes, NHS, transport, infrastructure, stuff like that. Also defence, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Starmer's being pushed into a corner to push. I mean, they're headlining this week that he's going up to 3.5% of GDP on defence spending. NATO obviously seriously rattling the can. And you can understand that. I mean, we're getting slightly off tangent here, but the Trump stance, you can actually understand with the NATO thing. The Americans have been doing all the heavy lifting for like 50 years, 60 years, and everyone's been putting a little bit of a donation in and, we'll lend you an airfield. And quite rightly, the Americans have got a lot of debt as well. So they're saying no. So, yeah, the defence thing. And defence is good political cover, isn't it? Because you can say, look, I'm going to have to cut this, this, and this, but it'll keep you safe. So that works. Hey, look, here's an optimistic thought, Johann. And it's something that I thought at the beginning when it all started with the farm tax thing. Could it be that we do end up with a utterly pulled apart Elms pot? And look, I know that's not going to be good for a lot of people. I get that, and it's really bad news. But it means that you could almost turn around and say, we'll sacrifice this billion in farm spending, but then we'll rethink what's going on with regards inheritance tax. Is that a chink? I don't know. But it's, I can see why they're pulling what they're doing. And with their mentality, looking at it through their eyes, they clearly have very little regard for the rural economy and for what we do as a sector. And they obviously fail to understand the sensitivities that are in there. And I think the long-term danger, there is a long-term danger underlying all this, though, isn't there? That if you pull that funding, something is going to give and your production ultimately will drop. You can't just concentrate or rely on the non-funding sensitive or non-support sensitive farm enterprises to carry on carrying the can, because everyone has to carry the can and everyone produces a bit, which cumulatively comes to a lot. And we're 61% self-sufficient at the moment. And if you jiggle about with that support too much, you will. I mean, you're seeing it happen now. I mean, it was the other week when I was driving up to an NFU meeting last Tuesday. They were talking about the inheritance tax and the inflation figures on the radio. And you'll remember last Tuesday when they announced the inflation figures, they were saying, overall, it's only up a little bit, but the reason it's up a little bit has been another surge in fresh food prices. And then they started talking about meat, and we know what's been happening in the meat and the proteins market. Globally, they are surging because there ain't much product about. And you think to yourself, can they not see? They've just got to be really careful, because if you pull the support so much that you denigrate production capacity so much, not only does it sort of put us in a precarious state in terms of food supply, but the impact that will have on inflation is huge. So a few $100 million spent here supporting a few crazy farmers actually in the long term flattens out your inflation line. And they still haven't got their head round it, has it? I don't think the Whitehall. I think the other thing is I don't think the Whitehall machine has got its head round farm support, because all through the EC, EEC, EU years, they just took the Brussels money in whatever form and slapped it at UK Ag. There was never any member state contribution, with the extreme emergencies like foot and mouth and things like that. But year on year on year, it was never there. And there was always this uncomfortableness of the Treasury of supporting farmers. And then we've had the last psychodrama of the last 8 years, post-Brexit, and it's just never settled. And so, we find ourselves in not in a great position. So, don't hold out for anything. If something comes, hey, that'll be a wacky surprise, won't it? But other than that, do not hold out for anything. Budget for nothing. Move on.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
British farmers face significant challenges, from unpredictable weather to isolation and rising production costs. That's why Kubota UK proudly supports Britain's Fittest Farmer, a nationwide competition promoting physical health and mental well-being in agriculture. Backed by the Farming Community Network, it goes beyond fitness, encouraging open, honest conversations about mental health across the farming community. Learn more about Kubota at kubota.co.uk.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Now, thousands of farmers will descend on Lincolnshire in the coming week for this year's cereals event, the annual show for combinable crops. This year, cereals makes a welcome return to Andrew Ward's farm between Newark and Sleaford, where it was last held in 2008. Farming has seen some big changes since then, during which, like many growers, Andrew has been striving to make a profit while reducing his carbon emissions. Louise went along and asked him how he was doing.
I think this is a really interesting topic of conversation because we've had trials over the last 7 or 8 years where we are reducing the amount of soil we move, we are direct drilling, we are putting cover crops in, we're doing all things that you would want to do to help the carbon side of things and help emissions. But in our 7 years of trials, 6 out of those 7 years, we actually reduced our margin and we lost £180 a hectare as an average over those 7 years. And the biggest problem for me, and that is on our clay soils, not on our light soils where the cereals event is. But for me, on those clay soils, all we find is that if we cut our soil movement and we scratch the surface, we actually then cut our yields at harvest time. And of course, for me, that's a double whammy because you need high yields to help you in your carbon journey. And so if you're not getting high yields, your carbon situation is worse. But not only is the carbon situation worse, the nation's food supply is worse because it means you're relying on more inputs, which then, if you need more imports coming in, then you're affecting carbon as well. So you're affecting the carbon system in the UK massively. So for me, it will work on some soils, but you have to be very careful about saying, I'm going to go all this for carbon because it'll end up cutting your yields, which then cuts your bank account.
So back in 2008, the cereals event was a hugely successful occasion. We're looking forward to a similar event this year. So just a reminder for everybody, June the 11th and 12th. And you've got your own bar there, I gather. Yes,
we've got a Wardy's Waffle bar. For those listeners who are viewers of Wardy's Waffle, my YouTube channel, we've got a Wardy's Waffle bar where we will be serving waffles, funnily enough, throughout the day. And we've got some nice alcohol as well. And that will be really good to meet people and everybody come up there and say hello to me who watch the videos and some new people as well. And next to that, we have got the young farmers area as well, which I'm really, really pleased about because I think the young farmers have had a tough time over the last year, 18 months, and a lot of it's unjustified. And so I wanted to get an area where young farmers could meet each other. And I do a lot with young farmers with the Forage Aid Trophy, with the charity that I started. We have a trophy that the club who raises the most money for for Forage Aid. And I sort of get involved with young farmers talks and lots of clubs I go to throughout the country. So to have a young farmers area in cereals made perfectly sense. So it's the first year that's happened. Hopefully it'll be really successful and it'll be a regular feature going forward. And the other benefit of it is it's right next door to the Wardy's Waffle Bar. So I can keep my eye on them and they can come and say hello.
That's Lincolnshire farmer Andrew Ward there giving us a sneak preview of this month's cereals event on the 11th and 12th of June at Heath Farm, Leadenham, just off the A17 there between Newark and Sleaford. Louise, arable farming's big event of the year, up to about 20,000 visitors expected to attend. Anything in particular you're looking forward to seeing? What should people be looking out for, do you think?
Well, cereals has really always been a technical event, if you like, for the arable farmer, although I think it probably has to be said it's been becoming more political and it'll be very likely that that'll be the focus this year, given the timing of the event. But on the technical side, I mean, I think people very much go to look at varieties, and I will certainly go to look at varieties. We've got a particular issue this year, as we've already discussed on previous podcasts, with this yellow rust situation. So I'm sure people will be quite keen to understand more about that and how it's going to affect the variety choice they make for next year. Obviously, there's also some agronomy information and findings around that. There will be business tools at this cereals event, and we can't get away from that. That's just as important. So there will be information on that side that people will be wanting to look at and get together. There are seminars and debates. There's a particular Regen Ag focus those are seminars that are being run by BASE UK, which is the farmer organisation for conservation ag, regen ag. So there is a good knowledge exchange part of the event. So I don't think either we can underestimate just the sort of social side and the networking side, which people really, really need at the moment. You know, we're all in this situation together, and I think just to attend a day at the event, whatever information it is, or you are or aren't after, it's just good to be amongst friends and recognizing that you're not alone. Everybody is in the same situation when it comes to the prospects for arable farms at the moment.
Yeah, you say things will be more political or have become more political. We will, in fact, as Farmers Weekly, be hosting a Farmers Weekly Question Time event on the first day of cereals at the KWS Seed to Shelf marquee on the stage there, 9 a.m. on day one, with some good speakers, including NFU President Tom Bradshaw. Louise, Andrew Ward, host farmer, also keen to do something for young farmers as well.
Yes, it's something I think that Andrew Ward himself was very keen to do. There is a dedicated young farmers marquee tent hospitality area. Andrew, he's insisted on that. He thinks that it is a particularly tough environment at the moment for the younger people in the industry. So he wanted them to have their own area where they could all get together and meet their friends. And I think that's on the sort of main walkway. And in fact, it's situated right next door to Andrew's Wardy's waffle area. So I think he's got a bar in there, and they are, of course, also serving waffles. But I think that's a really nice idea, actually, and I'm sure it'll get very good support as well.
And Wardy, Louise, almost a young farmer himself the last time cereals was hosted at Heath Farm near Leadenham. You have to go back to 2008. A lot has changed since then. A lot of water under the bridge in farming terms.
Oh, yeah, well, I can remember back in 2008, Andrew Ward, as we drove in the gate of the cereals event, he was busy mowing off his spring barley in the field next door because he had to enlarge the car park to be able to fit everybody in. So as he said to me, that's when things were really buoyant. I think they had something like 27,000 visitors that year. And he had no choice but to make a bit more space for all the parking. So that's probably unlikely to happen this year, but you never know.
Yeah, very different times, 2008 and 2025. 2008, the environment and food production very much seen as being at loggerheads. DEFRA Secretary, Environment Secretary Margaret Beckett under the Labour government then suggesting that we could more or less import all of our food and farmers should just be park keepers, mowing lawns and doing environmental stuff. I think, Hugh, today we've reached more of a happy medium when it comes to the environment and food production going together and being done hand in hand.
Absolutely. And you can have both. But then equally, what's really important, I think the next big battle really, most people tend to realise that you can have both now, but it's how you set out those metrics in terms of environmental impact, and how we still haven't sorted that out in terms of how we measure that and how we properly judge our emissions within each agricultural system. But the other thing as well is how we set those metrics in terms of productivity. And obviously, we know there are some metrics and some systems, and whether it's production collectives or banks that are backing, it's all about a whole farm approach and not taking into account land area and productivity. And then there are other people saying, well, no, this is about, you've actually got to look at the productivity stuff. And actually, cereals, I'm always reminded, always reminded. And this goes back 4 or 5 years. Bill Clark, as we've had on, was on the podcast years ago, a retired wheat breeder. And I always remember that interview with Bill Clark at Cereals on the knife stand, however many years ago it was. And he just said, productivity. We cannot let productivity slip, particularly with the demands on the market that are, and they're ever evolving. And he's so right. So, yeah, there's a better acceptance that you can have production. alongside doing stuff for the environment, but we're still way off nailing out what those metrics actually are. But I'm really looking forward to cereals. I always like cereals. There's lots of people there, and you never know. There might be a bit of something on a stand that's vaguely useful for a beef farmer, like a handy box for a quad bike or a pressure washer. I don't know, Johann. You got to think forward as well as backward, haven't you?
As always. And if we look backwards at 2008, weather-wise, very different again from now. 2008, 96 millimetres of rain falling there in Lincolnshire in the week before the cereals event. We've got rain forecast this week, but on the back of one of the driest springs that many of us have ever seen.
Yeah, hasn't, and look, not just the weather overall has changed. Go back to 2008, it's changed massively, hasn't it? I mean, that period of the noughties, the mid to late noughties, I was working in London at the time, and I remember is when we first started to really have those heat blasts. Those heat blasts really started to appear. Significant, 10-day heat blast, as opposed to previous to that, the whole of my lifetime was random. 2 days above 75 degrees. Yay, that's summer. Boom, move on. And suddenly we got these drier big spells. But yes, having all the rain that they had then, we had some very welcome rain here yesterday. It rained pretty much all day, which is phenomenal for the maize. But yes, the weather, look, again, it's another thing we're at the front line of climate change in terms of anyone listening to this that's actively farming will know that the weather is hugely different. Wherever they are farming, the weather is hugely different to what it was back in 2008. And it's certainly a hell of a lot more challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, challenges always with us. They just come in different forms, I guess. If you want more details about the cereals event, you can find them online at cerealsevent.co.uk. If you want to come along to the Farmers Weekly Question Time event at Cereals, that's on at 9 a.m. on the first day at the Seed to Shelf stage, sponsored by KWS. We'd love to see you there. And if you want to submit a question for our expert panel at that question time, then simply email us at podcast@fwi.co.uk.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Now, time for a special message from this week's podcast sponsor, which is Syngenta. Syngenta's launched a new initiative called Fields of the Future, and the goal is to tap into farmers' insights on evolving cropping practices and variety selections to understand how growers might adapt to current and future challenges in UK cereal production. As genetic solutions to pest and disease issues enter the market and become available in commercial varieties, farmers, of course, face some very important decisions, and these choices can significantly impact both profitability and sustainability goals. The results of this initiative are now in, offering valuable insights into how growers are navigating what are complex issues. Watch out for more variety insight from Fields of the Future in Farmers Weekly and online over the next couple of months at fwi.co.uk. And thank you very much to Syngenta for sponsoring the Farmers Weekly podcast. And now a special shout out and message from this week's sponsor of the Farmers Weekly podcast.
Harvester Parts Limited, your partner for spares and replacement parts.
When you're battling against a breakdown at the busiest time of year, the most important thing to be is ahead of the game.
Make sure your kit is in working order so you're ready to roll when you're up against it.
And when the stuff does go wrong, because it always does, make sure you've got a reliable partner who can get the right part to you next day.
For spare parts for all major manufacturers, call the team at Harvester Parts on 07774 273 822. That's 07774 273 822.
Or simply visit www.harvesterpartslimited.co.uk. That's harvesterpartsltd.co.uk for a calmer, more productive harvest.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
You're listening to the Farmers Weekly podcast. Welcome along wherever you're listening to us from. You can email us podcast@fwi.co.uk. And if you're in the UK itself, you can message us by texting the word farm followed by a message to 88440. Louise, a busy week for you. You've been out and about a lot this week.
Yeah, I've been out and about a lot this week. It's a very busy time of year in the arable world, as you probably appreciate. So it's when all the open days and trials events tend to take place. Obviously, right now, all the plots are looking fantastic and it all seems rather wonderful. So we get out different parts of the country and go and see what's what. So I've been at a NIAB open day this week. I've also been at Hutchinson's Blackgrass demonstration. I've been out on a farm this morning. That's Tom Pearson's farm near Cambridge. Anybody that's seen the film 6 Inches of Soil will probably recognise Tom's farm is the one that hosts Adi, who stars in the film, who has her market garden business. But actually, we've been out there today looking at actually what they're doing on the farm. So that was a really interesting morning. You know, Tom runs a very regenerative system. So we've been looking at, how he's using foliar N and how he's going to use compost teas and microbials. And we've been looking at clover understories and variety blends and all that sort of thing. So, I've seen everything this week from the full-on chemical ag, if you like, with looking at all the differences between the pre-emergence herbicides for blackgrass and what have you, and then been out to look at something a bit different today. All equally fascinating, of course, and all have their place in their own way in what we're all trying to do to produce good, healthy, nutritious food.
And a fair few comments from farmers you've met along the way this week, Louise, following your bombshell admission last week on the podcast that you've never set foot in or visited a Greg's bakery.
Yeah, people were very surprised when I came out with that admission. I'm not quite sure why. I think it's probably the beige food thing. It doesn't really do it for me. But I'm sure, it's all very delicious, Greg's. Please don't take that to heart. But however, I have never actually managed to find my way into a Greg's, or certainly not yet. And people were keen to let me know that they found that hard to believe, considering the amount of time I spend on the road. But there you go.
Yeah, well, don't knock it until you tried it. Hugh, how about you? Have you spent much time on the road this week visiting Greg's bakeries?
No, this week's mainly been a week of, it's just been a week of farming, Johann, and sorting out stuff at home, washing out calf sheds and what other exciting things, and just farm stuff, really. Meetings, washing out sheds, looking at the maize growing, which is great. And we've had rain, as I said, which is just phenomenal stuff. So on the whole, it's just been a steady old week. And off to see the South of England show this weekend, see what's happening there. But on the whole, it's been a steady one.
Steady as she goes then, Hugh. Nothing to see here.
You've been out purchasing, I can't say it on the radio actually because it's too rude, but you've been out purchasing quality. You're in some weird space-time continuum where you're trying to recreate the halcyon days of motoring of the late 1950s, but in the body suit and car shell of 2011.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at, Hugh, is, as you know, my son Henry passed his driving test a couple of weeks ago. He's now driving around in his own car, which set me thinking, with the children leaving the nest, I don't really need 4 seats in a car myself. So yes, I was that person. I'd just gone out and bought a 20-year-old 2-seater sports car, convertible BMW Z4. Lots of summer fun. Of course, it's now sort of rain on the horizon forecast, but drove it up to a farm visit in Northumberland this week. And I am, fully aware that I am now officially a man with a midlife crisis.
That's one way of describing it. And did it come up to all your expectations of being like driving a go-kart effectively?
Yeah, it's good to drive. It's good to drive. I've only had it a few days. But, I mean, I wouldn't recommend driving it long distances in a straight line on a motorway. Being a convertible canvas roof, it's like driving in a boombox. It's also very low slung. So I don't know how I'm going to get it into the field at cereals next week. You'll probably see me by the side of the road, summing a lift, having parked it up somewhere and trying to get in or walk my way in that way, but lots of fun and something for the summer.
Did you have string back driving gloves on?
No, I've avoided all of that sort of stuff, Hugh, and before you ask, I didn't drive it all the way up the A1 with the roof down either, so quite noisy, but quite enjoyable too.
Yeah, anyway, look, each to their own. I hope you have a wonderful summer of motoring in it.
He says, tongue firmly in cheek. Look, thank you very much. That's enough car chat. What about the markets, Hugh? What's happening?
Let's start with the actually, it's quite an intrepidatious finished deadweight price this week. It's like the Omen film all over again. The beef price this week is 666.6.
A number of the beast indeed.
It's dropped, unfortunately. It's dropped from 678.3 last week. Although, consider a year ago it was 480.8. So the beef price going through the beef market going through a bit of a psychodrama. The live weight price for beef, 363.3. That's back about 9p on the week. Sheep rings ease off. SQQ deadweight 716.8, back from 753. Live weight 375.2. As usual, when one drops back, the other surges on. That lightweight had surged on quite a bit on the live ring, about 35p ahead of where it was this time last week. Pig price 206.9, virtually unchanged, 0.2 of a penny up, so that's good news. And as we think about cereals, we certainly won't be going there to celebrate the commodity prices, that's for sure. Feed wheat drops another £2 this week, £160.80. Milling wheat 178.30, virtually unchanged. It's changed 40p. It's 40p back even. Feed barley £150.10. It's back a pound. All seed rate £422.20. That's back nearly 20 quid. Feed peas £213.70. They are virtually, they've gone up about a pound. Feed beans, 223.30. They have also gone up a pound. And the diesel price has risen slightly as well. This week, you should be paying, according to the Wednesday morning ring round, 63.45 pence per litre. That is up almost a penny on the week.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
And finally, it's June, and it wouldn't be the month of June without it being Open Farm Sunday. This year, on Sunday the 8th of June, when hundreds of farmers across the country prepare to open their farm gates and welcome the public onto their farms to show them how food is produced and how farmers look after the countryside. Well, earlier I caught up with Philip Vickers of Raby Estate in County Durham, and I asked him why Open Farm Sunday is so important.
I think it's really important to give the public the chance to see what we do as an industry. I think it's absolutely invaluable. So we've got quite a lot going on, various trade stands supporting us, farm tractor and trailer rides, look at the crops. I just think more people should contribute. So, Lord Barnard, the owner of the estate, he's very passionate about getting the public involved.
Particularly important at a time like this, probably when farming is fighting its corner, trying to get the message across that farmers, food production so important, and all the other stuff that farmers do as well.
Absolutely, and there's so many myths about what we do, so it's really important that we convey the message of what we actually do.
As farm manager Philip Vickers of Raby Estates talking about Open Farm Sunday and what the estate is putting on. So Hugh, Philip Vickers there from Raby Estates up in County Durham. Are you opening your farm this Open Farm Sunday?
We've actually got a private group here on Sunday, but we've had lots of trips actually. The last month, I did a Scouts walk on Wednesday. We had a young farmers walk the week before that. We've been busy with walks, but we've never done Open Farm Sunday. But it's a great thing, isn't it, in terms of the numbers of farms that are getting involved, and I suppose what's still testament to the fact the numbers of people that still turn up at these events, they're always really well attended, aren't they?
Certainly well attended, and certainly that interest in farming. Louise, Open Farm Sunday for you?
Well, no, not this year, actually. I say that with a clean conscience because I do normally help out at a local Open Farm Sunday. I've done that for 3 years on a trot. They're not actually doing it this year, I don't think. So I'm not needed there. And I actually haven't offered anyone else for me to go and help because I've got quite a lot of other stuff to do at the moment. But I think it's a wonderful event, always very well attended. The farm that I used to help out on, people were really, really keen. It always attracted a good local audience. And I would say, given everything that farming is up against at the moment, it's an event that's more important than ever this year.
Yeah, certainly a time when farming needs to get its message across, Hugh.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you can't underestimate that at all. It is really important for whatever reason, whether it's just the basics of, look, this is where your food comes from, or it's reaching out to the community to say, look, this is what's going on and why you mustn't let your dog run around because it causes all sorts of problems. So really important to get those messages out there at every level, whether, like I say, at a really local level, just basics around food production. And then, of course, there's helping people or the wider population to understand the political scenario at the moment with regards to farming, the government and everything else that's going on, not just within the UK, but the global context as well. So, yeah, there is a heck of a lot. I mean, I found it. We have the scouts here, a scout group here on Wednesday evening, and some of the parents came along, and by the end of it, we sort of shown them the calves and this, that, and the other. And the kids are actually really amazingly well engaged and asked some really good questions. But then the parents were trying to fathom all of the stuff that we're dealing with at the moment. And, they were quite taken aback when you actually explained all that was going on. Not, like I say, at every level, whether it's locally, nationally, internationally, politically, environmentally, and otherwise. They're like, wow, yeah. So, yeah, there's some really strong messages and some really positive messages as well as challenging messages to get out there to people, isn't there?
Lots of challenging messages, lots of positive messages too. Good luck to everybody who's taking part in Open Farm Sunday, whether you're hosting one yourself, whether you're going along to one, or whether you're helping out at one. We wish you all the best. That's it for this episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast. We do hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. If you have, please do leave us a 5-star review and please do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week with a special episode of the podcast recorded as live at the Cereals event. If you do see us there, or indeed if you do see me thumbing a lift by the side of the road trying to get in, then do come and say hello. We'd love to meet you. But for now, until next week, I'm Johann.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh Broom.
Thank you for listening.